of a Chippendale and the stance of a street fighter, this looks like a supercar of the old school. It's the leather-lined, airbagged, catalytically sound super coupe they call the Vantage. Unfortunately, as it's the only finished Vantage there is, Aston Martin wouldn't let us drive it. But after I'd dangled the PR man out of an upstairs window by his eyebrows, he did agree to lend us this. It is their engineering prototype, so the fit and finish isn't what you'd call regal. Also, the rear lights are wrong, the wheels are wrong, there isn't even a back seat. But, most important of all, mechanically, it's spot on. I have been looking forward to this for months, and I'm not going to let a wonky paint finish spoil things. This is a cocktail of quintessential old-world charm and savage power. It's like rugby, ever so English, yet gut-wrenchingly brutal. It is poetic violence. Don't, whatever you do, confuse it with a sports car, though. It's not. If it were ever to appear on Mastermind, its specialist subject would not be country lanes. The steering is just excellent, but it rolls and wallows where a Ferrari would point and squirt. But that said, you can't put 4 people and a brace of suitcases in a Ferrari. You won't find the most opulent interior this side of Balmoral in a Ferrari either. This is what makes the Vantage so special. It's a Rolls-Royce with attitude. There are any number of reasons for liking this car, but the main one is under the bonnet. You want to know what a proper engine looks like? That is a hand-built 5.3-litre V8, which, for that little extra something, has 2 superchargers, which are so big you could go on holiday in them. It develops 550 brake horsepower, and perhaps more importantly, 550 pounds-feet of torque. You are looking, ladies and gentlemen, at the most powerful production car in the world. However, because it weighs more than 2 tons, it is not the fastest car in the world. It's not far off, though. This is the Santa Pod Raceway, which in its time has seen some fair old duels. Today, though, it's playing host to one of the most ferocious shootouts of all time. This is what happens when you pit a Vantage against a Diablo. Both get from 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds. Only when you're up past 150 miles an hour will the Diablo's superior aerodynamics start to pay off. It peaks at 204 miles an hour. The Aston's out of steam at 185. But remember, in the Aston, your family can come too. This is about as good as cars get. Okay, I know, it chews fuel like a power station. It's just about impossible to insure, and it costs a whopping £185,000. But car enthusiasts everywhere should get on their knees and thank God that someone somewhere still has the guts to make a car like this. Now from the sublime to the ridiculous. The last time we looked at a three-seater car on Top Gear, it was the McLaren F1, which developed 600 horsepower. This develops 19. It's the zero-emission Fiat Downtown, which has a sodium-sulfur battery pack and 2 electric wheel motors. Fiat say it should be able to whiz along at over 60 miles an hour and has a range of over 200 miles. Don't mock. This might just be the shape of things to come. The Koreans seem less bothered by such worries. With their HCD2 sports coupe, Hyundai is keen to emphasize aggressive and muscular styling for what is unashamedly an enthusiast car. But it has to be practical, not just pretty, so the hatchback body offers good luggage space, the dramatic interior gives comprehensive instrumentation, and there's room in the back for a third adult, this time sitting sideways. They say it'll be on sale in 4 years' time. The Z13 is BMW's vision of the future. Under the stubby body, there's an aluminium space frame for good crash protection, and that's why they put the engine in the back, under the luggage floor. Again, there are only 3 seats. BMW say the central driving position means you can get in easily from either side. The gear lever is electric and mounted on the dash next to the hi-fi. Plus, there's a car phone, fax machine, and of course, satellite navigation. The average age of the design team that did this Mercedes concept car is just 30. They wanted to make a Mercedes which, for a change, appealed to the heart rather than the head. But, being German, they've been practical about it, using standard production items wherever possible. To that end, it has a run-of-the-mill V8 engine. It uses running gear from the coupe. The interior is from the forthcoming 190. Even this glass roof is a production possibility, providing, of course, you fit aircon as well. In fact, apart from the looks, which are questionable, and the colour, which isn't, there are really only 3 interesting things about this car. One, it's got these lights down here that come on when you get in or out of the car. 2, it's Merck's first ever hatchback. And 3, and perhaps most impressive of all, to get this thing from a drawing board to reality here at Geneva, it's taken just 3 months. This is the Plymouth Prowler. Now, at first glance, you might think it's just another ridiculous concept car. That or an extra from a ZZ Top video. But in fact, it's for real. It uses stock transmission. It has a 3.5-litre, 6-cylinder Chrysler engine. They say they could put this lightweight flying machine in production tomorrow with a price tag of just £15,000. It comes from the same stable as the Dodge Viper, which you may remember from our report last year, has no roof. Well, with this, they do at least admit that outside of California at least, it does rain from time to time. Flash, eh? You know, the great thing about these 2 cars is they show that Chrysler, at any rate, has faith in the future of the American motor industry. It's hard to know what Renault is confident of with this, the Raccoon. It must be something pretty calamitous. This device is supposed to be proof against snow, fog, sandstorms and even floods, because it's also amphibious. No propellers though, the engine drives a couple of hydrojets. They claim it's a sports car, traction engine and helicopter all in one, although the pilot seems a bit dubious, occupying the 3rd seat. All this for just 3 people. Still, it's packed with technology, including ultrasonic hydrophobic glass in the windscreen instead of wipers, a suspension system to keep the body level over any terrain, and of course, sat-nav. Anyway, coming up in a moment, the second half of our film on the comparatively simple terrain of the Alaska Highway. I'll tell you what though, if ever we make a film about driving around on the moon, I shall know what car to use.
Last weekend at the Daytona Raceway in London, the cream of the motorsport fraternity went go-karting for comic relief. And this time, Tiff Niddell actually got to drive.
Yes, it's red nose time again. A bit of comic relief. I'm taking part in a marathon karting event that hopes to raise over £100,000 for charity. Now there's all sorts of celebrities here like Rowan Atkinson, James Hunt, Mike Smith, Midge Ure. The teams had to bid for the services of the celebrities. And of course, Top Gear Tiff was in high demand, and the lot that got me were the Kodak Compass Box. We've got no chance.
At the end of the event, Tiff's team came home third behind the Misfits and Shell, and the whole exercise was well on its way to reaching the £100,000 target of money raised for comic relief.
Last week, you left us halfway up the Alaska Highway, taking an aerial view of just how hard it had been to plough a 1,500-mile furrow through beautiful but awkward terrain like this. It was built back in 1942 when it was feared that Alaska and its oil fields would be attacked by forces from under the rising sun. Uncle Sam needed a supply route, and it took them just 8 months to build it. A lot of the guidebooks say that the road gets worse and worse the further north you get. Well, that might be the case if you're used to dawdling along an interstate at 55 miles an hour. But if you, like me, relish the notion of the open road, this is just paradise. It ducks and weaves, and all the corners are banked exactly the right way. It's just seventh heaven. The only problem is that round every corner there's a new piece of wildlife. Grizzly bear, black bear, elk, caribou, even the odd wolf. It's a bit like trying to do the British Grand Prix at Longleat. However, the most common form of wildlife up here is not a big mammal. It is in fact the mosquito. Now, a lot of people think I'm stark staring potty for sitting inside a metal tomb on such a beautiful day as this. But let me tell you the reason. If I just lowered that window even half an inch, the car would immediately be full of airborne teeth. It may be seventh heaven for a driver, but woe betide anyone who steps outside their vehicle. The cars we were using, the Jeep Cherokee and the Ford Explorer, two of America's favourite off-roaders, will be featured in a road test later in the series. I'll tell you this though, both of them were a sight better than the transport people used before the road came along. Remember, this was engine country.
Well, this lake you see here used to be one of the main means of transportation by the water to get up to Whitehorse and other surrounding communities.
So what effect did the highway have on all this? Fair bit, I would guess.
Oh yes, well they changed the whole transportation altogether, and they didn't have to depend on the waterways anymore. Like where it has helped, we used to get supplies up here by the waterways only twice a summer with the big boats from Whitehorse.
This is what, 90 miles to Whitehorse?
Oh, I would imagine it would be a lot more by the waterways. It used to be a 5-day trip, 2 days to go down the river and 3 days coming up.
And how long does it take now?
2 hours. Because right here in Teslin, there was only one car, even before the highway. The first car was brought to here was by my uncle back in 1928.
What on earth did you drive it on?
On the lake.
But it was frozen, presumably.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't chitty chitty bang bang.
No. Then they built a road in the summer. They built a road about 5 miles on the lake shore down this way. It took them 3 summers to build 5 miles of road.
But they built the highway through here a bit faster than that.
Oh, yeah. They built 1,500 miles of it in 8 months.
So it was sort of waking up one morning and whoops, you've got a road outside your house.
That's right.
Odd, isn't it, how a road built at a cost of $138 million and designed specifically to keep the Japanese out is being repaired today with distinctly un-American equipment. In its early days, the road was a simple affair, in many places just a track. But after the war, it was handed over to the Canadians, who have turned it into the glorious thoroughfare it is today. Only very occasionally do you run into stuff like this. Not only is it smooth, but also you'd have a job getting lost. Turn-offs are few and far between. But one of the most important, historically speaking, is just before Whitehorse. It's a right turn to nowhere. At this point, the Alaska Highway meets up with the Canal Highway. Now, Canal was built during the war as well, at a cost of $134 million, just $4 million less than the Big Brother. It was designed to bring oil down from way up north to a refinery they were building just down the road from here at a place called Whitehorse. Trouble was, just as they finished it, the war ended, so the whole project was scrapped. It was described later in Congress as being a junkyard monument to military stupidity. Not even the tourists use it anymore. Slightly more successful has been Whitehorse, the biggest town on the highway. It's at mile 914, but it made its name and fortune long before the road came through. Between 1896 and 1899, upwards of 30,000 hopeful miners filed through this place. Whitehorse became the very pivot of the Klondike gold industry. They built a railway from Skagway on the coast 160 miles away, but from here on up, everybody, everything went on one of these. The gold rush itself had pretty much died down by the time ships like this made it into service. But the mines still needed to be supplied, and the only way you could do that, short of using mules, was by using beautiful stern-wheelers like this. And I do mean beautiful. They even used these boats to help build the highway in '42. This one, the SS Klondike, pushed a barge full of military equipment all the way from here in Whitehorse to Fairbanks. And that's over 1,000 miles away. The irony was, though, that it was digging its own grave, because, pretty and characterful though these stern-wheelers are, they're no match on purely economic grounds for an 18-wheeler Kenworth truck. Now, don't think that to build the highway they just installed one team in Dawson's Creek to work north and one in Fairbanks to work south. They installed teams all the way along the proposed route, some going north, some going south, some going wherever the surveyors told them to go. As a result, there was no one specific meeting place. So they chose here, Soldiers Summit, as the place for the formal opening ceremony. And they didn't choose it for the view either, because November the 20th, 1942, was the coldest, bleakest day this area has ever known. And believe you me, it's known a few. But in the summer, the most important thing is air conditioning, a commodity which, thankfully, both our cars had. It was bakingly hot, and when you reach Alaska, the only thing that drops is the price of fuel. You don't really need four-wheel drive for covering the highway now, but the big knobbly tyres you get on off-roaders are worthwhile. Even so, yesterday I managed to get myself a puncture. Wobbled along for a few miles, pulled into a filling station. A bloke came out, spat his tobacco on the floor, looked at the tyre and he said, "Tyre go flat?" And I really wanted to say to him, no, I was just driving around quite normally and the other three just swelled up on me. You wouldn't want to get a puncture in this. It was part of what appeared to be a rest home for the old and the weird. It looks like an old army truck, but with those wheels, there has to be more to it.
1942 Chevy 10.5 four-wheel drive when it was built, yes. And did it look like this then when they built it?
Except for the big tires, pretty much so. It probably had a flatbed on the back when it was built.
And if it's 42, that means they used it on the highway, yes?
Probably did. At least it probably drove the highway in 1942 when it was first opened, because it's been here in Alaska all that time.
It's in pretty good nick.
Yes, pretty good shape. Things don't rust much up here. We have very little humidity. You can let something set out in the woods here for many, many years, and you'll get very little rust.
So what do you use it for?
The purpose of the big tires is we have a lot of swamp around here. We call it muskeg. It's permafrost, permanently frozen ground, and when it begins to thaw from the sun and that, it turns very swampy, muskeg. And you need, if you want to cross this, go hunting or anything of that type, you need something with tracks or huge tires on to keep you on top of the swamps. And,
so it can swallow trucks, no problem at all?
No problem at all, right. Yep.
Well, we had managed to avoid being eaten by either the muskeg or the mosquitoes. And with just 101 miles to go, we reached the end of the Alaska Highway. Something here wasn't quite right. No, something definitely wasn't right. I have in my hand a piece of paper which certifies that J. Clarkson, me, has gone through the trials and tribulations to reach mile 1422, the end of the Alaska Highway at Delta Junction. Now, we had been led to believe that the Alaska Highway was 1,523 miles long and that it finished at Fairbanks, 101 miles to the north of here.
So why do the people of Fairbanks believe that that's the end of the
Well,
highway?
It's not the old-timers that believe it. It's mostly newcomers that weren't here at that time. But this is where the construction of the Alaska Highway ended, because the other road was already in, had been for years.
So how did the people of Delta Junction feel that when Fairbanks wander in saying, hey, ours is the end?
We just don't pay much attention because we know where the end of the construction was. So it's sort of a moot point.
Nevertheless, we pressed on, and there it is, in the valley, the end. Fairbanks. The sort of place where it rains a lot and tourists celebrate the completion of their voyage by going on boat trips. To prove you've been on this genuine imitation sternwheeler, you can even buy little trinkets like this tie pin, which was made in Taiwan.
Here I go, turn the page. Now here I am, on the road again. There I am.
In fact, as we turned south and headed for Anchorage, we couldn't help smiling at the irony. America spent a fortune protecting itself from Japan. It built a road where everyone said a road couldn't be built, specifically to keep the Japanese out. But here we are, just 50 years on, and the Japanese are just walking in. This is the seemingly all-American Dodge Stealth. It comes from the people who brought you those wonderful muscle cars, the Charger and the Challenger. Except this one is just a little bit different because it was designed in Japan, it was built in Japan, it even uses a Mitsubishi engine. It is, I'm afraid, about as American as Saki.
In next week's Top Gear, the Japanese car designed and built for Europe. The Daimler Dart, a good buy or a load of woe. And luxury on two wheels with the Honda Goldwing. Ring Top Top Gear's car line on 0891 447747 for more information from Jeremy Clarkson on the Aston Martin Vantage.